All right, everyone. Now that we kind of have an idea of where we want to start with our essay and what kinds of topics we want to be researching, it's time to start thinking about how do we research and what kinds of things do we search? Where do we begin with translating that thesis statement into our research? Now, this is Comp 2, which is the second part of Comp 1. And in Comp 1, you weren't required to do research. I don't know if your professor allowed you to or wanted you to or whatever, but it wasn't required for that class. However, for this class, a majority of the second part of the class is focused on research and finding good sources and citing those sources and those kinds of things. So we want to start thinking towards now that we have an argument that we want to base our essay around, what kinds of things could we be searching to back up that argument? Because, of course, a good argument always comes with evidence, right? So we want to have actual proof that our argument makes sense. Which is why outside research does actually matter. In Comp 1, you might not have been required to use outside research, but for this class, that is a big requirement for that final paper, and of course, your first draft, which will be submitted later in the semester, closer towards midterms and spring break. So, why does outside research actually matter? It shows that your ideas are grounded in existing knowledge and that you're not just pulling ideas from just yourself. Now, of course, we want you to also be pulling from your own brain for that argumentation as well, and the kinds of things that you see happening in the narrative that you're drawing from. But also, we want to find other sources as well. It shows how your argument builds upon real world findings or debates that are already happening, and that it shows that your argument is actually relevant. It also enriches the complexity of your argument by drawing on a diverse range of sources. It shows that your argument is valid, that your evidence is real, that you actually have proof for what you're arguing. Basically, it shows why we should trust you. So that's why it's important. It demonstrates that your own ideas are based off of sound research and informed by established scholars. So that's why we always want to be citing reputable sources, because it enhances the credibility and authority of your own argument, and it shows that your argument is valid and that we should actually trust you by showing these sources. It just makes your argument a lot stronger, basically. So when we form these research questions, you want to go ahead and take that thesis statement that you already have established. So that was what you turned in for the draft, and we want to break down the main argument or claim of your thesis into specific questions that can then be researched. So the first thing we want to do is identify the main argument, and here's some steps that you can take if you're not sure where to begin with research or finding good sources. So the first thing you want to do is write out that thesis statement. So just pull that thesis statement out, put it in a blank Word document, write it on a piece of paper, whatever is most comfortable for you. And then take that singular sentence and identify the main argument in it. So how much further can you break it down? Remember, we were talking about elevator pitching it. Can you break down that argument even further to find the argument within the argument, basically? And we'll do a practice question with that in a second. As well as that, focus on key concepts. What cultural lens are you using? Write that down as well, so you have that as your main idea. What other key words do you have in your sentence that stand out to you? And then use question words to break that down. So it should overall address specific aspects of the overall argument. So let's do a little practice with that. So let's use this example that we used last time for the feminist slide. For this, you really want to just break down what your main argument is. So let's say that this was the thesis statement that you're going with. This is the thesis statement and the main argument of your entire essay. Gilmore Girls explores feminism and the concept of womanhood through its emphasis on female relationships, such as between Lorelai and Rory, inclusion of female characters with agency and autonomy, and discussions between characters of the challenges women face. So we wanted to identify first the main argument here. The main argument usually will come first. So the main argument of this essay is that Gilmore Girls explores feminism and its concept of womanhood. So right here, Gilmore Girls explores feminism and the concept of womanhood. That is the main argument of your whole entire essay. And then, of course, you're proving it through X, Y, and Z, those three points of evidence that back up your argument. However, explores feminism and the concept of womanhood is the main argument, and that's where we can start our research. So you want to focus in on those key concepts. Like I said, explores feminism and the concept of womanhood is the main argument there. So when you're researching, think about things like what has already been written on this? What has already been written on feminism in early 2000s television, which is what Gilmore Girls is? What has already been written on the portrayal of women in television? Um, Even breaking down even further, just women in television. What has already been written on feminism in television? The agency of women in television, female relationships in television. All of these are ideas to kind of generate where you want to take your research. And then we can turn all of these bullet points into question words and then answer these question words through our research. So, what has been said about feminism in early 2000s television? How have women been portrayed in television? What do female relationships look like in television? And how can agency of women be portrayed in television? So if you see what's underlined, all of these are question words. And that's what we're going to use to research basically. It should lead you directly into your argument by answering it. So the main argument of this essay is that Gilmore Girls does explore feminism and the concept of womanhood. So another way you could look at this is how does Gilmore Girls compare to other television shows of the early 2000s? And how does it explore feminism better or more in depth? So basically, you're just arguing this further. You're finding evidence to support your claim essentially. All right, so I know a lot of you will come to me with this. I can't find anything on my topic at all. So what you want to consider is the questions that you're asking or what you're typing into the research bar on JSTOR or on the shared library website or on Google Scholar. Is your question too broad? Is your question too specific? Those are two things to consider. You know, are you asking something so specific into the search bar that nothing's going to come up? Or is your question so broad that you're getting everything under the sun that's ever been written about television? You want to kind of find the middle ground there. Where do you see your argument fitting into existing conversations? Are there scholars already written about Gilmore Girls? I'm sure there's something on JSTOR about Gilmore Girls, honestly, or just feminism and television in general. Is there a gap in the conversation where you can fit your argument in? Um, Another way to do this, like I said, is approach your topic from your cultural lens or literary framework. If you're writing on a film, a television show, or a video game that is very recent, and honestly, I'm saying recent, as in the past 5 years or so, it's going to be a lot more difficult to find actual scholarly research on that specific piece of media, just because it takes, years for professors and scholars to get those things published online. So approach it from your cultural lens. Just look at feminism in television shows. It doesn't your what you cite and what you use as evidence doesn't necessarily have to be just from your specific show or your specific piece of media that you're talking about. It can be on your cultural lens itself, just whatever supports your argument best throughout your essay. So let's look at a couple of practice questions. Let's say this is your thesis. Inception reflects on the Freudian theories of the unconscious or subconscious, the power of dreams, and the complexities of the human psyche through the blurred boundaries between reality and dreaming. Let's say that's your thesis. So, a couple of questions we could pull from this thesis, for example, could be what has already been said on dreams in literature or narratives? That's breaking it down to its bare bones. How is the human psyche portrayed in narratives? And then we can go into specifics. What specific conversations have been said about Inception? So, if there are specific scholarships or specific citations or scholars that have written about Inception, of course, you can draw from that. But like I said, it's going to be a lot harder to find those specifics. But asking things like what has already been said on dreams in literature? Freud wrote a lot about dreams. You're going to find a lot about dreams and dream study and all of that involving psychoanalysis in narratives. So these are just great places to start, is breaking down your thesis even further to its main bare bones and then searching that into the search bar. And let's say this is your thesis. By players filling the role of a lost cat navigating a cyberpunk city, Stray delves into Marxist themes of alienation, loneliness, and the human condition in a dystopian society. So this is dealing with economic theory again. So some questions you could draw from this. What has been said on alienation in dystopian societies in narratives? How is loneliness related to dystopia? And then specific conversations surrounding Stray. But like I said, it's going to be a lot more difficult, especially because Stray is so new, came out in 2022. Um, but things like loneliness and alienation and dystopia, there's going to be a whole lot of scholarship written on that. Um, so that won't be as difficult to find. Of course, you can always email me if you're having trouble with research. As well as this, the shared library has a lot of research help where you can set up a time over Zoom. I think there's also maybe just a text option or even email. I'm not sure what they have to offer, but check out Shared Library's website because they will also be able to help you a lot more with research than I will. Of course, my field of study is literature and discussing these concepts more than it is research help, but an actual librarian through Shared Library will be able to help you and assist you with finding research topics, with finding specific citations, finding specific scholarship, those kinds of things. But of course, always feel free to email me as well. But if I'm not able to help you, I'll probably direct you towards Shared Library's website as well. But please let me know if you have any questions or if you need help with Shared Library or JSTOR or anything like that.